cracked asphalt surrendered to dirt and pine needles. But none of them ever turned back first. The five of them, Lisa, Tom, Alex, Mia, and Henry, had a habit of daring one another into the kind of places older folks in Maple County warned you to leave alone. The cabin waited somewhere beyond the timberline, a blot of weathered cedar tucked into the ribs of the ridge, a place where a family had been wiped out and then retold as a cautionary tale. Lisa walked point with a flashlight and the beam slicing through the September mist. Tom carried a canvas pack with batteries and a folding tripod. Alex kept a coil of nylon rope looped over one shoulder because Alex was the kind of guy who planned for broken stairs and loose floorboards. Mia filmed on her phone, narrating in a breathy whisper for the channel that never posted anything they couldn't laugh at later. Henry drifted at the rear, a hoodie pulled up despite the warmth, knuckles bumping the bark of trees as if he could feel the house trembling through them already. The forest carried a shy hush at first, and then on some trick of the breeze, the hush broke into a low rustle like paper scraping wood. Somewhere downhill, water burbled under a mat of leaves, the sound slick, secret disapproving. Now and then, a twig snapped sharp as a knuckle crack, and each time they turned to count one another. "It's real," Mia said, panning her camera toward the clearing where a slumped roof line poked through the gray. The Hollis place. No joke. The story was over 50 years old. A father who went quiet after losing his job at the mill. A mother who wrote letters in trembling cursive that never made it to a mailbox. Two small kids who tapped on windows after bedtime. One winter night, something terrible. By spring thaw, all that was left was a smear of rumor, and a house that soaked up silence the way raw wood drinks rain. Alex reached the porch first and tested a step with his boot. It held. The planks were furred with moss and a ribbon of something darker in the grain that could have been rot, could have been old blood. Mia stepped around him, filming the doorframe. Someone had carved a child's height chart into the jammed faint pencil notches labeled with dates. The last mark lacked a name, only a crude drawing of a smiling face with triangle teeth. A gust nudged the roof, and the porch let out a long, wounded creak that moved through the boards like a sigh you could stand on. From somewhere inside the cabin came the faintest tapping tick, 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 as if a loose chain or bead pull was worried by air. Wind, Tom said, though he put his hand on the pack to feel the comfort of weight. Lisa tried the handle. It turned without protest, and the door yawned inward. A smell came out, shut-in damp and old varnish and cold ashes, but underneath that, a sweetness like the inside of a music box when you first lift the lid. The front room had a half-collapsed sofa, a hearth choked with cinder, and a wall of hung frames where the pictures had either been removed or had slipped down and were facing the plaster. A shallow staircase rose along the right wall rail, warped treads sagging. Beside the doorway to what might have been the dining room stood a child's wardrobe ankle-high, for a grown-up chest-high for a child with hand-painted roses flaking off its doors. One door wouldn't close all the way. Something inside bulged against it. The cabin seemed to hum, no, not a hum, but the sort of tight, high whine an old TV used to make in an empty room barely there until you noticed it, and then you couldn't stop hearing it. "Guys," Mia whispered to the camera, "I'm not saying it's blood, but look at the walls." She swept her light across the plank interior, and there they were, countless thin, vertical streaks, as if fingers had dragged something red downward in coiling parallel lines. Time had browned it into something like tea stains, but the pattern was unmistakable. It all started near the ceiling and flowed to the baseboards. Alex squatted by the wardrobe. "Kid-sized," he said, or doll clothes. "Careful," Tom said, but Alex had already tugged the stubborn door. It opened another inch, and something soft shifted inside, scraping the panel with a sound like cotton teeth. From deeper in the house, a piano sang a single warped note, thin metallic and out of tune, as if struck through a wall of water. The note hung there, and then slid down itself like a sigh going hoarse. "There's no way there's power here," Henry said. "And that piano, this is ridiculous. Old pianos still sing if the strings have tension," Tom muttered. "Air moves, wood moves, something taps the key." Resonance. A new sound stitched the silence, a child's giggle far from bright, clipped short as if it had been spliced from a longer laugh and glued into their moment. It didn't come from any single direction. It was everywhere and nowhere, thin as frost. Lisa pulled the wardrobe door fully open. Inside, dolls. Scores of them shoulder to shoulder like a little militia, porcelain faces with faded lips and eyes that were not glass at all, but painted in strokes that somehow looked wet. Cloth bodies threadbare at elbows, plaited hair the color of dust. Most wore dresses lace grayed and stiff. A few had tiny coats with real brass buttons. One was naked and cracked straight through the torso like an Easter egg. At the back, something larger hulked under a child's quilt. Lisa reached in, fingers hooked, and drew the quilt away. The big one was not a doll. It was a marionette with a mouth that hinged in a wooden smile and teeth carved too carefully to be a toy's. Its strings were tangled around a crosspiece carved with the initial H. Henry flinched. "Put that back." Lisa propped the marionette against the side of the wardrobe. "Creepy cells," she said, quelling the tremor in her own voice. She raised her phone and took a photo. The flash lit the wardrobe like a lightning strike and then died. The flash fizzled with a brittle sizzle, and afterward their ears filled with a faint, regular dripping tap. Tap. Tap somewhere above their heads, and the way a leaky ceiling tattles on rain. "There's no storm," Mia whispered. "Maybe a pipe," Alex offered, though he was looking at the ceiling boards, as if expecting an eye to open there. They split the entry floor for coverage. Alex tested the stairs. They held. Tom drifted toward the doorway on the left, where a dining table tilted on 3 legs and a black shape sat under a cloth in the corner. Upright piano, surely. Mia framed the streak marks in a slow pan. Henry stood before the wall of frames and one by one lifted each hanger to re-level the pictures. All of them had slipped. None of them showed a face. Every photograph had been turned around, so the brown paper backing faced out. Lisa lingered with the wardrobe drawn by old lace and the quiet terror of painted smile. She touched a doll's cheek, and her finger came away slightly tacky, as if the glaze were still drying after decades. "Gross," she said. "It's like these things." A floorboard somewhere behind the piano gave a small, attentive croak, like the cabin had just shifted its weight to listen better. Then from the staircase, 3 footsteps rose without a body to make them woody thuds that seemed to hesitate midway, as if deciding between up and down. "Cut it out," Tom said, swallowing. "I didn't move," Alex answered, frozen. The piano under the cloth sighed again, a cluster of sour notes like a fist rolling across keys. Under it, something tinny rattled in time springs, screws the little brittle things that help a sound pretend to be music. They stood in a little circle of their lights. The room wasn't big, and yet it felt like distance had stretched between them, each person on their own island of breath. Lisa lifted the marionette and gave the crosspiece a practical shake, half to show Henry she could, and half to prove to herself the strings still obeyed hands. The marionette answered with a faint wooden clack joints, kissing their sockets a dry, polite sound, like knuckles on a child's desk. "Okay," she said, forcing a laugh that wouldn't land. "He's friendly." "Don't name it," Henry said. "Don't give it a job." "I wasn't going to name it," Lisa lied. The drip above them quickened a soft rain on the far side of wood, perhaps a dozen separate taps walking themselves toward a corner. In the same breath, a whisper threaded up the stairwell, too frayed to be language, the hush of someone telling a secret into their own cupped hands. Mia's lens wandered to the streak marks again. "Angles are wrong," she murmured. "Everything runs down from the ceiling, but there's no seam, no leak." She traced one line with the edge of her phone and held it up. The streak stained the glass for an instant, brown-red in the reflection, and then it was gone. The phone glass was clean. "Don't do that," Tom said. "Don't take it with us." "It's not." The child's clipped giggle returned, one burst, then two stuttering, as if a record had caught on its groove. Between the echoes, a thinner sound crept in the light pluck-pluck of a single piano string being toyed with by a finger not struck by a hammer. "I'm going upstairs," Alex said, trying to split courage and impatience into something that looked like leadership. "If the ceiling's leaking, the second floor will tell us." "Don't split," Henry said. "We don't split." "Since when?" Lisa asked, scooping the marionette back into the wardrobe in a petty act of control, then closing the doors. They clicked shut. She pressed her palm to the painted roses, and the wood felt warm like a cheek. They climbed together. The stairs rode under their shoes like a slow animal, carrying them where they didn't belong. Every third step answered with a hollow drum beat from within the riser, as if space beneath the staircase held a heart and it was counting them. The second floor opened into a short hallway, with 3 doors, one ajar, showing a room with a child-sized bed and peeling star stickers on the ceiling. One closed and latched with an old hook, and one that hung crooked, revealing a bathroom with a tub that had rusted into a bruise. They drifted to the child's room because there was no argument that would take them past it first. Toy blocks squatted in a toppled tower. A rocking horse faced the corner as if in time out. On the dresser, a little oval mirror in a cracked tin frame, ringed by a halo of hairbrush bristles that had shed and stuck there like a crown. Somewhere behind them, deeper in the hallway, floorboards released a long, wet sigh, a sound of wood exhaling after being pressed by a cool hand. "See," Tom said, trying to grin at Mia. "Just the house settling." "House don't settle," Henry said, making it a noun, not a verb. Lisa touched the oval mirror. She expected dust, but the glass felt slick, recently wiped. What stared back was not quite her. The angle thinned her face, pulled her eyes too close. She leaned in, peering, and then noticed it hairline cracks radiating from the center like spider silk. Her reflection's mouth opened a fraction. In real space, Lisa's mouth was closed. "Guys," she whispered. "Guys from the bathroom." A faucet ticked once, metal tapping itself, followed by a thin run of water that hissed across iron. The drip downstairs answered it like a twin. They moved as a clutch toward the bathroom. The tub was dry, the tap stiff with rust. No water. Mia filmed the tap anyway, the lens steady in hands that had learned to be steady in haunted places. Alex tried the closed door at the end of the hall. The hook lifted with a scrape. Beyond it lay a narrow room, without windows, both walls hung with mirrors of every shape, ovals, rectangles, a ballroom's worth of scavenged glass, jammed shoulder to shoulder from floor to ceiling. "Why would anyone do this?" Mia said. "Superstition," Henry murmured. "Mirrors to trap things." or to teach them to recognize themselves, Alex said without meaning to sound grim. They stepped inside. The room gathered their footsteps into a soft drum and threw them back as if another 5 quieter lighter walked with them. Tom lifted his flashlight and panned. Lisa's reflection peered from 100 versions, her chin a notch higher in each, her eyes a fraction darker, like a copy degraded one step at a time. Something tugged inside her chest. The wardrobe downstairs. The warm wood, the dolls, the marionette with its 2 careful teeth. She took a step back and bumped a hanging frame. In Glass World, 1,000 Lisas flinched. The mirrors began to sing, not with music, but with that high, tight whistle of stressed glass, the keening you hear right before a crack races to the edge. It rose and thinned the pitch climbing until it scraped along their nerves, a sound so fine it made tears bead without your permission. "Out," Henry said. "We should—" The whistle cut off. Silence, real silence, landed so hard that it felt like pressure. They stood inside the stillness with their own breath like paper bags over their mouths. Then from downstairs, the piano found a melody, a children's song that should have been sweet, 3 notes up, 3 notes down. But every note came twisted, flattened, and dust dry, like bones learning scales. Over it, a child's laughter stitched and tore, as if someone were practicing cutting tape. "Who's down there?" Alex snapped, more to puncture fear than to ask a question. "No one," Tom said. "Nothing." "Then it's time to leave it alone," Henry said. They backed out of the mirror room into the hall, into the choice they never wanted to admit, lay at the center of every dare, go or stay. The house had arranged its evidence into encased dolls that remembered touch walls, that wept from the ceiling, down an instrument that played itself laughter, cut to fit silence, and still turning away felt like losing a bet to a building. 5 minutes, Mia said, voice small but brave. "This is the shot we came for." 5, Alex echoed. "Then we go." Lisa nodded, and despite every sensibility in her body, reached for the little oval mirror on the child's dresser to straighten it as if tidiness were protection. The instant her fingertip touched the glass, a hairline crack widened like a smile, and her reflection's mouth opened wider than a jaw should go. The same instant, a sound like a dozen fingernails raked the inside of a wooden box, rapid, frantic scratching that swelled to a straddle. From downstairs, the wardrobe doors banged once, twice, a hollow clap. Clap. Clap that matched a child's clapping game. Lisa spun toward the stairwell. "The dolls," she said. She ran. They ran with her because friendship is a habit you fall into even in a haunted place. Down the stairs, the steps beating a count to 5 they did not want to hear answered. The entry remained unchanged, except for the wardrobe, its doors hung open, their hinges trembling. Inside the wardrobe, something shuffled, a whispering rustle, like dry dresses turning themselves on their hangers. Tiny feet pattered, a many-legged scamper like beads poured across a table. "Lisa, don't," Tom said because he had to say it. She stepped closer. The dolls stared past her, past everyone, toward some point in the room where no person stood. Their painted eyes gleamed as if wet, and a smell of hair oil and old starch rose in a stale bloom. The marionette was gone, where Lisa began. Before the question finished, the room filled with a noise like a miniature storm, clicking cloth, whispering a dozen tiny mouths sucking in a breath that they didn't need. From the piano, a single sharp chord slammed down like a lid. The dolls leapt. They didn't leap like animals or like toys. They launched like hands relief cut from a painting, all motion without mercy. Small fingers found Lisa's cheeks, her throat, the soft places near her eyes. Painted smiles blurred into a churn of mouths that were not mouths at all, but hard lips and porcelain teeth. She staggered backward, clawing at them, and felt the cold, unforgiving bite of glaze. For one instant, Alex had her wrist, and then something jerked her away with a puppet's precision, and her scream broke against the walls. Her scream ripped the room in two, a raw, tearing sound that seemed to come from behind the plaster as well as from her own body. The doll's clatter rose, click, click, clack like hail on a tin roof. Over it all, the child's chopped laughter tried to keep time and failed. Tom lunged in, swinging his pack like a shield. It broke 2 dolls and sent 4 more spinning. Henry grabbed her shoulders, and Mia tore at the braided hair of something latched to Lisa's jaw. The piano banged another wrong chord, as if cheering. "Let go," Alex shouted. He ripped the wardrobe door from its hinge and used it like a snowplow, sweeping dolls into a corner. For a heartbeat, Lisa's face surfaced from the swarm, laced with thin red lines, her eyes wide, locked onto Henry's. "Take me out," she whispered. "Please." He pulled. Tom pushed. Mia cleared a path with the door. They half-carried, half-dragged her toward the porch. The dolls followed for 3 steps and then stopped at the threshold like dogs trained to heel. Behind them, the wardrobe picked shut with a soft thud, and in that quiet, a single bead of liquid hit the floor tap and spread like a red eye opening. On the porch, they laid Lisa down. The scratches across her face were too neat, too symmetrical, as if arranged by a hand that appreciated patterns. Blood, not gushing, but steady, mapped itself in threads down to her collar. She was conscious. She was shaking. "We're leaving," Alex said. "Now." No argument, Tom said, voice a thread. Henry looked past them at the doorway. The piano was silent. The drip had never stopped. From somewhere the house wanted to call a mouth, a low humming began the sound mothers make to hushed cradles, the sound of something rocking itself to sleep. "5 minutes are up," Mia whispered, and the words fogged in the cooling air. They lifted Lisa and started across the clearing. The trees did not move. Behind them, the cabin let out one last settling groan, a long bow drawn across a single note no sane instrument would claim. And faint, so faint you could blame the wind, came the click of tiny shoes turning back toward their places and the soft, satisfied sigh of a wardrobe closing on its secret. They didn't run. Not yet. Running would come later when they reached the car and found the back seat arranged with something that looked like string. For now, they walked 5 shadows stitched together by habit and fear toward the dirt road and the ordinary world where houses bleed only on the inside. Lisa's wounds had stopped bleeding, but the scratches seemed alive. They weren't just cuts. They were arranged like runes curling toward her eyes. Every time the others looked, the marks had shifted ever so slightly, as if righting themselves. Henry kept muttering, "We should leave. We should leave. We should leave." His voice cracked into 3 uneven pieces of the same plea. Alex pressed him down into the back seat of the SUV, where Lisa shivered under a blanket. Tom sat at the wheel staring at the dirt road ahead. The engine turned, coughed, and then died. "Try again," Mia said. Tom twisted the key. The starter whined. Something clicked inside the dashboard, not mechanical but wet like lips smacking together in hunger. He yanked the key out. Henry's hoodie hood sagged forward. "It doesn't want us to leave." "Stop saying that," Alex snapped. "It's just the battery. Or moisture." From the tree line came a piano note. 1. clear bent as if played on strings made of bone. They froze. The cabin sat behind them, dark and unlit. No one had touched the piano, yet the forest had carried the sound to them like a gift. Lisa stirred under the blanket. Her voice was raw. "They're not staying inside." "What do you mean?" Mia crouched beside her. Lisa's lips trembled. "The dolls, they're walking." And then, faint but undeniable, came the patter of many tiny feet on gravel like rain, given toes like beads skipping across the earth. The sound circled the SUV once, twice. Something small knocked against the rear bumper with a hollow thunk. Tom slammed his fists against the wheel. "We're not trapped. We're not. Everybody get out." "Push." They spilled from the vehicle, 3 on the back, 1 on the side, straining. The tires spat dirt in forward motion. From beneath the SUV, something dragged a scratch fingernails across the undercarriage. Henry dropped his grip and staggered back. "Don't," Alex barked. "Stay together." Lisa's scream cut through everything. They spun to find her on the ground, half out of the car. Her blanket had been hooked, pulled toward the tree line. She clawed at the dirt as the fabric tightened around her throat like a leash. Mia dove hacking at the blanket with her pocket knife. The blanket tore with a sound like fabric being unzipped too slowly, each thread squealing. Lisa gasped free, but the ripped half of the blanket slithered away by itself, vanishing into the mist. "Back inside," Tom said. "We hold out until morning." "Morning won't come here," Henry whispered. They dragged Lisa back up the porch into the house that already felt like it had swallowed them once. The air was worse now, hotter, heavier, saturated with a sweetness that clung to the tongue like syrup. The wardrobe doors were shut again, tight. No dolls in sight. But the drip, drip, drip had grown louder, slower, thicker, as though the ceiling bled tar instead of water. Mia lifted her phone to record. The screen glitched, freezing frames that didn't match the room. Smiling children with black sockets for eyes, a woman with her mouth sewn shut, a family portrait where every face was a doll's face. She lowered the phone, trembling. Alex pointed at the staircase. "Upstairs again." "We need answers." "Answers don't matter," Henry said. "Only survival." Tom grabbed him by the collar. "Then surviving means we go up. We figure out what it wants." They climbed. The house seemed steeper now, as if every step took longer to cover. The boards groaned under their weight, voices made of timber groans that dragged vowels through the dark. The hall looked the same, 3 doors. But the child's room had changed. The blocks now spelled out words, "Stay." The rocking horse swayed slowly, no breeze, its head nodding as though agreeing with some unseen verdict. Lisa clutched Mia's arm. "I don't want to go in." "You don't have to," Mia said. "Stay behind me." They crossed instead to the mirror room. The door was ajar, though Alex swore he'd shut it. Inside, the mirrors were all fogged. No reflections, just pale glass, like frozen ponds. Henry touched one. A muffled scream erupted from behind the glass so loud it shook the pane. The surface rippled once, as though water wanted out. Henry stumbled back. His palm was wet not with condensation, but with blood. His own veins pressed against the skin as if they'd tried to crawl out through his hand. Lisa began to laugh. It was too high, too thin, not hers at all. She slapped her own face to stop him. "It's in me. They're inside." Mia pulled her away, sobbing. "Don't say that. Don't say that." Alex's flashlight flicked toward the far corner of the room. One mirror hadn't fogged. It showed not their group, but the missing marionette. Sitting waiting, its strings taut as if someone above controlled it. And the carved teeth glistened wet. The mirrors sang again the high-pitched whine of cracking glass, rising into a shriek that felt like needles being driven into their ears. One pane split, then another raining shards. But the shards never fell. They hung in the air, suspended, pointing inward toward the group like knives. "Out!" Tom bellowed. They rushed the doorway shards, brushing skin, leaving thin white scratches that stung like fire. Back in the hall, Lisa collapsed. Her face was worse, blood dripping from the corner of her eyes, tears mixing with it. She whispered, "It's writing again." Mia looked. The scratches had indeed changed. Now they spelled one word clear as daylight: first. From the bathroom came a long metallic shriek, the pipes vomiting air like a scream squeezed through iron. Then water exploded, pounding the tub, splashing the floor red at first, then darkening into thick clotting streaks. Henry gagged. "It wants blood. Always blood." "No," Alex said, trembling. "It wants us." And somewhere below, the wardrobe banged open again. The doll's wooden clatter rolled across the floor, a storm of tiny limbs preparing to march. The doll's storm moved below them, 1,000 tiny clatters filling the first floor. The sound rose and fell, like a drum line made of wood and porcelain. Each footfall a cruel beat on hollow boards. The 5 of them pressed back against the upstairs wall, staring at one another with the eyes of hunted things. Lisa's voice quivered. "They won't stop until one of us is gone." "They already marked you," Henry said. He didn't mean it cruelly, but the words cracked the group's fragile silence like ice underfoot. "Shut up," Mia hissed. She pulled Lisa close, stroking her hair, though her own hands trembled. "We'll make it through. Together." From the wardrobe below came a steady slam bang. Bang, bang, as if something larger than dolls pounded against the inside walls. Each strike shook dust from the ceiling beams. Tom clenched his jaw. "We can't stay pinned here. We fight our way down and out." With what Mia whispered. "Flashlights, a tripod." Alex steadied his voice. "There's always something. These places, they give you weapons if you're desperate enough." He glanced toward the bathroom, toward the stream of blood still trickling from the tub. "Maybe it wants us to drown there. Maybe it's giving us a choice." "No," Lisa said sharply, surprising them all. "It's not choice. It's order." She pointed at the word scratched into her skin, first. "It wants us in sequence." The dolls clattered louder, building to a frenzy, until the rhythm turned into a sick parody of applause. Clap, clap, clap. Dozens of small palms celebrating. Henry covered his ears. "They're calling us down." Tom grabbed the rope coil off Alex's shoulder. "Then we don't go down. We go out the window." He tied it to the bed frame in the child's room and shoved open the sash. Cold air rushed in, carrying mist that smelled like copper. Mia leaned out. The drop was survivable, but the ground below was wrong. It writhed. The patter of countless tiny feet rose from the soil itself, as though the dolls had already spread into the earth. Their little shadows moved like worms in moonlight. "Not that way," she said, pulling back. Her face was chalk white. Henry whispered, "We're not meant to leave." Alex turned to him. "Stop saying that, or I'll make you stop." A new sound cut them, slow piano chords, one after another, climbing the scale. Each note struck like a nail into wood, ringing until the air itself felt nailed down. The song was building, waiting for something. Lisa clutched her temples. "It's counting. The song, it's counting us down. 4 notes. 5, 6, each higher, sharper. The last cord hung unfinished, begging to fall. Suddenly, the mirror room door creaked open on its own. Inside, the fogged mirrors had cleared. Each pane now showed a different scene. Lisa being torn apart by dolls, Tom stabbed through by falling shards of glass. Alex dangling from the ceiling beam, Mia drowning in walls that bled, and Henry laughing, his eyes empty. "No," Mia whispered. "It's showing us what it wants." Lisa staggered back. "Not once. Promises." The mirrors trembled and began to knock against the wall, tap, 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 like 100 fingernails asking permission to come through. Tom kicked the door shut. "We don't look at that. We don't play by its script." The hallway lights, what little moonlight leaked through cracks, dimmed as if shadow had thickened into cloth. In that darkness rose a new sound, a child humming. Off-key, broken, as though humming through a throat filled with water. Mia's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. The screen had turned on by itself. A text message scrawled across the screen from no number, "Next." They froze. No one wanted to speak it, but everyone knew the house wasn't waiting anymore. It was choosing. Lisa whimpered. "It's still me. I'm not done." "No," Henry said hollowly. It moved on. He pointed at Tom. On Tom's arm, scratches had begun to appear, thin red lines carving themselves into his skin. The word "second." Tom swore, clutching his arm. The blood oozed as though from invisible blades. His flashlight slipped from his hand and rolled, casting wild beams across the hall. The dolls below erupted in cheer, pounding, clapping 1,000 tiny throats, laughing all at once, high and jagged like glass chimes. "Don't listen," Alex shouted. "Tom, move. Don't stand still." But it was already happening. The bathroom door burst wide, and the mirror over the sink shattered outward, sending shards flying like knives. Tom raised his arms, but too late. Glass rained over him. The sound of shattering was deafening, a metallic scream multiplied 100-fold. Shards pinned him, embedding shallow into his skin, cutting his clothes to ribbons. He collapsed to his knees, gasping. Blood ran in small rivers down his chest. Mia screamed, rushing forward. She pulled pieces of glass from his arms, but more seemed to sprout, as if the cuts were birthing their own shards. Every mirror in the house joined in cracking, splitting each one, screaming its own shrill pitch, a chorus of breaking glass. Tom convulsed, coughing blood. He managed to look at Alex and choke out, "Don't let it. Don't." Then his body shuddered and went still. Silence fell, broken only by the drip, drip, drip of blood from his wounds onto the warped floorboards. Mia covered her mouth, sobbing. Lisa screamed until her voice broke. Henry pressed his forehead to the wall, muttering prayers that no one recognized. Alex swallowed hard. It chose him. It won't stop. Lisa looked wild, her face slick with sweat and blood. 2 gone, 3 to go. Downstairs, the piano began again, this time playing faster, childlike hands pounding keys with manic joy. And underneath, faint but clear, came the sing-song voice of a child chanting 1, 2. Mia gripped Alex's sleeve. "We can't let it pick the rest of us off one by one. We need to break it. End it." How Alex demanded. Her eyes flicked toward the wardrobe downstairs. It started there. It ends there. Henry shook his head violently. "That's what it wants. Go down and you'll give it the rest. Stay up here and it takes us anyway." Alex snapped. The wardrobe slammed again, bang, 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 harder, faster, until the house shook like a drum. The dolls' clatter turned into marching boots, unison a tiny army preparing for war. Lisa's laugh came again, high broken, not hers. She clutched her chest. They're already inside me. They won't stop until it's finished. Alex looked at the others. His face was pale, but his voice was steel. We end this. Tonight, the house seemed to breathe around them. Every wall flexed like ribs. The drip, drip, drip above slowed thick and syrupy, each drop smacking the floor with a wet plop that echoed too loudly. The 4 survivors stood frozen, Tom's blood still steaming on the boards where his body lay crumpled. Mia wiped her face. We can't stay up here. If we do, it'll just pick the next one. Lisa rocked back and forth, clutching her temples. It wants me again. I can feel them scratching inside my skull. Henry grabbed her wrist. No, it's moved on. Look at Tom. It already claimed him. You're not next. Alex lifted the rope again. We go down. Now. We burn the wardrobe if we have to. Burning it might free what's inside, Henry warned. His voice shook, but carried conviction. You don't open a prison unless you know what walks out. From downstairs came the creak of the wardrobe doors, a slow, yawning groan that spread through the floorboards, like someone dragging fingernails across their bones. They descended anyway, one step at a time. Each stair thudded hollow, as if struck from inside by fists trying to get out. The front room glowed with a sickly light that had no source. The wardrobe stood wide open now. Inside were fewer dolls than before. A dozen gaps showed where porcelain soldiers had marched out. But one figure waited in the center, the marionette upright, its strings taut, though no one held them. Its wooden jaw was cracked wide in a grin. As they entered, the piano banged a single triumphant chord, the sound vibrating through the walls like laughter pressed into wood. Lisa doubled over, gagging. Thin red threads wriggled from her nose like worms and crawled back into her skin. She screamed, clutching her face. Mia tried to hold her. Fight it, Lisa, fight it. The dolls shuffled in from the shadows, their feet pattering in unison, pat, 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 like tiny soldiers marching across tile. Their painted eyes caught the sickly glow glimmering wet. Alex shoved Mia and Henry behind him. He snatched a broken table leg from the floor and swung it at the first wave. Porcelain cracked. A doll's head burst with a sound like an egg shattering on a plate. The fragments skittered across the floor, each shard making its own high-pitched chime, as if laughing. Keep moving, Alex shouted. Henry grabbed a chair and smashed it against the ground for a weapon. Mia clutched her knife tighter. Together they tried to force a path to the wardrobe. But Lisa didn't move. She stood, trembling arms spread as if offering herself. They want me. Let me go. No, Mia screamed. She lunged toward her friend. The marionette clacked its wooden jaws, clack, 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 a sound like applause, like teeth grinding. Then it rose. Strings pulled tight, yanking its limbs into jerky, puppet-like strides. It advanced toward Lisa. Henry hurled his chair leg at it. The marionette caught it midair. The sound of wood snapping was sharp as a gunshot. The broken chair leg fell in splinters. The dolls surged. One latched onto Mia's leg, its tiny porcelain hands gripping like iron clamps. She stabbed downward, breaking it apart. The crack of porcelain was followed by a squeal, not mechanical, but human, like a child being pinched. Alex reached Lisa and grabbed her arm. Don't give in. Stay with us. But Lisa's face was twisted in ecstasy and terror. It hurts less if I let them in. Suddenly the walls themselves began to bleed. Thick streams of crimson seeped from between the logs, running downward, dripping in heavy globs that splashed to the floor. The sound was a wet chorus, plop, 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 echoing like 1,000 heartbeats. The floor grew slick. Henry slipped sprawling. Dolls leapt onto him, clawing at his face. He screamed. Alex swung the table legs, smashing them off, blood and porcelain shards mixing on the boards. The piano struck up a chaotic tune, now discordant notes crashing like thunder. Over it came the thin laughter of children, multiplied, circling the room like a carousel of ghosts. Mia pulled Henry upright. "We can't fight all of them." Lisa broke free of Alex's grip and staggered toward the wardrobe. She stepped inside, arms spread. The dolls froze in place, their little heads tilting. The marionette bowed strings, pulling taut. No Mia cried, but Lisa smiled through blood. "It ends with me." The wardrobe doors slammed shut with a bone-rattling crack. Bang! Her scream came next, muffled, but piercing a sound like someone being shredded by 1,000 tiny blades. The banging inside was relentless, pound, 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 as if she was being pulled apart and reassembled. Then silence. The wardrobe creaked open again. Lisa was gone. In her place sat a new doll porcelain face, painted perfectly to match hers. The eyes glistened with wet paint still drying. Mia collapsed sobbing. Henry stared in horror. Alex raised the table leg, but his hand shook too much to strike. The piano slowed into a lullaby, sweet at first, but warping sour notes bending like rusted nails. The marionette turned its head, staring at the three left. Its jaw opened wide, creaking. And then the wall behind it bulged outward, blood seeping in thicker waves. The sound was a flood rushing through unseen veins, gurgling, choking, filling the house with liquid breath. Henry whispered, "3 left. It won't stop." Mia gritted her teeth, wiping tears with her sleeve. "Then we stop it first." The wardrobe stood open like a wound that had learned to smile. Alex, Mia, and Henry stared at the new doll, the one with Lisa's face fixed forever between fear and surrender. And something inside each of them came unthreaded. "We end it," Alex said, voice low. "We end it for them." The piano answered with a brittle arpeggio, bright and wrong, like ice cubes dropped on steel. From somewhere near the ceiling, the familiar drip slowed to heavy drops, plop, 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 measured as a heartbeat that had learned to count. Mia's eyes were rimmed red. "If there's a story holding this together, we break the story." She pointed to the wall of picture frames that had been turned face down since they arrived. "Turn them. Make the house look at what it did." They moved as if on a silent count. One by one, they lifted the frames. Beneath the brown backing paper were family photographs decrypted from dust and time. A mother in a gingham dress, her smile shy. A father in a mill jacket, his jaw set too tight. 2 kids on a porch step with a wooden doll between them. In every image, the eyes had been scratched away, with something too small to be a knife, more like a pin, more like a child's angry fingernails. "Winter of 71. Henry read from a caption. "The last good day." The house exhaled through the floorboards, a slow, timbery groan that rolled under their shoes. Somewhere deep in the walls, a lullaby tried to start and then broke into coughs of static, as if a music box had swallowed dust. Alex set the frames down gently. "We're not priests. We can't lift a curse, but we can destroy its stage." He looked at the wardrobe, at the marionette, waiting like a master of ceremonies in a children's nightmare. "Strings first. Alex, don't." Mia grabbed his sleeve, but he was already moving. Tiny feet gathered in the shadows, pat, 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 answering his choice, like a crowd rising from seats. The marionette's jaw clicked twice, clack, clack, and the strings thrummed with a faint catgut hum. Alex stepped inside the circle of dolls and swung his broken table leg. Porcelain burst. He carved a path without looking away from the crossbar of tangled cords above the marionette's head. "If I cut these," he said, "it falls." "Or we do," Henry muttered. Mia pressed her back to the wardrobe, fixed on the marionette's teeth. "I'll help you lift on 3. They reached. Alex grabbed a knot of strings with both hands and pulled. The cords were slick and warm, as if alive. "Scissors," he said. Knife. Mia wedged her pocket knife against the cords and sawed. "Got it." From the ceiling, wood fibers creaked ee like a rope swinging on a beam in an old barn. Above them, something heavy shifted. The beam whispered to itself in dry splinter talk. The strings didn't cut. They tightened. With a deft dreaming motion, they climbed, snaking over Alex's wrists, winding up his forearms. He yanked back, swore, and ripped one hand free. But the strings were faster, quicker than hands, smarter than fear. "Alex," Maya shouted. She slashed again and again, but the cord caught the knife, turned it, and danced it out of her fingers. It clattered across the floor. A high, happy giggle flitted through the room, cut short like a tape spliced too close. The piano chimed 3 notes up, 3 down, keeping time with the strings that climbed Alex's arms. "Get away from me," Alex said through his teeth. "Both of you." "If I'm the one," he didn't finish. The strings coiled his throat in a soft, expert loop. He stood very still, eyes huge, as if a cold hand had closed on the back of his neck. "It's okay," he whispered. "It's okay." Mia screamed and reached for him. The string snapped tight with a sound like wet rope pulled across a nail. From the rafters, a beam gave a low wooden groan that answered the pull. He rose an inch, then 2 feet, leaving the floor in a jerk that felt rehearsed by the house. His shoes scraped the wall and knocked loose a flake of paint the color of sick teeth. His fingers clawed at the cord and found no purchase. Henry leapt, trying to shoulder Alex up, but he was too short. "Kick, kick," he yelled, sobbing. Alex's gaze climbed to the marionette. He smiled the saddest smile a person can make and mouthed something Mia couldn't hear. The beam creaked again, timed to a child's whispered count of 3. The dolls applauded in tiny slaps, clap, 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 delighted with their own theater. Alex's body went still. The strings slackened only slightly, as if satisfied but not yet done. Mia stood beneath him, arms raised and empty. "Stop watching," Henry said hoarsely to the marionette. "Watch me instead." He snatched Lisa's new doll from the wardrobe and smashed it against the hearth. The porcelain face did not crack. It bounced and rolled to a stop by the piano's leg. The piano answered with a scalded chord, angry and ringing, and the floor beneath it thumped twice like a foot stamping no. Mia's tears turned to fury. "Enough!" She lunged for the knife on the floor, scooped it up and flung the blade toward the crossbar of strings. It nicked one strand. Something squealed in the walls. A thin, needling whistle started in the mirror room, a sound of glass gathering itself to break. It sharpened and sharpened until it drew water into their eyes. "Basement," Henry panted. "Kiln. The mill Father worked at, he built this place. There'll be a burner or an ash pit, fire and strings." Mia looked at Alex's bare, quiet feet and then at the wardrobe. "Then we burn." They ran for the door that led to the kitchen, and beyond it, a narrow stair that fell into black. As they passed the walls, a wet rustle chased them, where blood slid and whisper fought with gravity. From below came the tiny cavalcade of feet, on steps, tick, 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 like rain going downstairs to see what the thunder is about. They hit the basement. It smelled like mildew and iron filings. A rusted stove that might once have been a wood-burning kiln crouched in a brick alcove. Mia tore its belly open. Inside lay ash, old and gray. Paper. wood, anything dry. Henry fed the kiln with broken chair rungs, a torn picture backing a curtain ripped from the wall. Mia struck a match with her thumbnail. The first lick of flame took, then folded, then rose again. The moment the fire caught, the house groaned low and long, as if waking with a backache. Upstairs, the piano pounded a tantrum of chords mashed by hands that didn't know when to stop. "Faster," Mia said. "Bigger." Henry added more wood. The flame swelled, then pouted, then found the right tongue to speak. Oranges and blues danced. In the stairwell, small hands tapped the railings, tip, tap, tip, coming down in rows. The giggling returned, multiplied, and off-key, as if a classroom of children had been asked to laugh at the same time, and none of them quite understood why. "Now the strings," Mia said. She grabbed a fire poker and plunged it into the heart of the coals. The metal reddened, then glowed cherry. "We go back up. We brand that crossbar." Henry swallowed. "It will do something to us." "It's already doing something." They climbed. The smoke coughed in the flue, huff, huff, blowing a sooty breath that chased them. From the front room, the marionette clacked its teeth in a fast little drum roll, clack, 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 as if thrilled for the finale. Back in the main room, Alex hung still and gentle like he had finally found quiet. Mia stood under him for one breath, touched his ankle, and then leveled the glowing poker at the crossbar. "Remember the kids' song," Henry said, trembling. 3 notes up, 3 down. If it's counting, we break the count." Mia jabbed upward. The poker met resistance, something that felt like bone and smelled like vinegar. She pressed harder. The bar sizzled. A scream poured out of the wardrobe, not from one mouth, but many layered and thin like wind, pushed through 100 reed pipes. The mirror room exploded panes, tearing themselves into confetti of light that hung and quivered in midair with a high insectile buzz. The strings writhed, then slackened. The marionette jerked once, twice, then sagged into a heap, its grin caving into a sulk. The dolls took one synchronized step backward. Henry grabbed Mia's arm. Again, she thrust the poker to the crossbar a second time. The sizzling grew louder. The walls answered with a new violence. Torrents of thick red liquid burst from the seams, splash sluicing across the floor. The sound became a choked gurgle, a house gargling its own history. Mia, Henry yelled. Back, too late. The rush found her legs, and then her waist. It was warm and heavy, not water, not quite blood, something memory-colored and cruel. She slogged to the doorway, but the flow curled around her like tide and shoved her into the bathroom. "Henry," she cried, fingers scrabbling at the doorframe. He lunged, caught her forearms, and pulled. The tide pulled harder. Behind him, the piano shifted into a music box, lullaby notes plinking sweetly, while the flood roared an obscene duet of nursery and storm. A child's voice sang soft, delighted 3. The door slammed on Henry's hands. He yelped, and in that instant the liquid rose to Mia's shoulders. She kept her eyes on his. "Finish it," she said. "Please." He screamed her name. The bathroom filled with a drowning hiss, like a tub overflowing forever. Beneath it, the house sighed in relief, as if a rule had been obeyed. The flood subsided almost tenderly, drawing itself back into the seams. The bathroom floor lay empty, only wet and shining. Mia was gone. Henry slumped to his knees. For a long blank second, he didn't remember how to be a person. Then he stood, hands bleeding, and turned to the wardrobe with a face that had run out of fear. It watched him. It had no eyes to watch with, and still it watched. He lifted the poker a third time, He drove it cleanly through the crossbar and into the back wall of the wardrobe. Wood screamed. A roar filled the cabin, not a voice, not instruments, just architecture yelling a timbered howl that shook dust from the rafters. The dolls went still and then slumped like marionettes whose player had fallen asleep. Henry tugged Alex down, gently cutting the strings with a shard of mirror, as if untying a friend's necktie after a party that went bad in the middle. He laid him on the floor. He closed his eyes. The mirror room glittered with a million tiny cuts of overnight sky. He went to that doorway and stood like a man at the edge of a winter pond. "Is it over?" he asked the house. In something like answer, the giggling resumed, but softer now, nearer as if a child had pressed its mouth to his ear. Just below it, a tiny piano tried one shy chord, and then another, too timid to be cruel. Henry laughed. It came out wrong, too sharp, too bright. He tried again, and it got worse. He pressed his fist to his mouth and walked out through the open front door. Outside, the trees were the same. The mist was the same. The SUV waited with its mouth closed. Dawn had not come, but the dark had thinned enough to pretend. Behind him, the cabin gave one last settling creak, a long violin scrape over a single splinter of note. From the porch, something tapped, tick, tick, like a stringed crossbar cooling in cold air. Henry walked down the path, one step after another. His laugh kept catching in his throat like a fishbone he couldn't cough up. He reached the car, opened the back door, and sat. On the seat, a coil of nylon rope waited arranged in loops, like a sleeping snake. He held it without knowing why, and a little rhythm woke inside his thumb and forefinger. He began to tap the rope, tap, 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 keeping time with a nursery song only he could hear. When the child's giggle answered from nowhere, he giggled back, and the two sounds braided until it was impossible to tell which was which. He didn't try the engine. He didn't cry. He only stared at the pines and smiled at something that wasn't there or was everywhere and counted under his breath. One he whispered, and then laughing forgot the next number.